Capitol tonight. So as you know, Governor Cuomo is proposing a major investment from the state to upstate infrastructure. That does include $22 billion for roads and bridges over 5 years or so, he says. There is also money in the proposal to improve wastewater infrastructure, airports upstate, and more. But after an historic investment from the state in New York City's MTA capital plan, there are people out there who are concerned that upstate is still getting the short end of the stick. Part of that hesitation comes from a lack of detail. It is unclear how all of this money will be divided, where it is coming from, where it is going exactly. With me to discuss is Mike Elmendorf. He is, of course, the president of Associated General Contractors of New York. It is good to see you, sir.
Thank you.
So you wanted parity. This is not parity?
This is not parity. You know, let's start with the good. The governor certainly is focused on infrastructure, probably in the most significant way he's been in this administration.
Yes, and as we saw in Troy, that's absolutely
that is very
necessary.
Timely, because parts of Troy are now basically underwater, which is troubling. So there's a focus on infrastructure. He's named the agenda Built to Lead, and a lot of the centerpiece of what he's talking about in the coming years really is infrastructure.
Right.
That's great news. And he is providing a larger capital program, we believe, although we don't really have the full details that we would typically have on how it breaks down just yet. But it's not a $22 billion program, because they're including in that figure last year's $1.3 billion that was given to the Thruway, and then an additional $700 million that's going to the Thruway this year. So we're looking at, we believe, a $20.1 billion DOT capital program, which is larger, and that's good news. And we can thank in part Washington for that, because as we talked about the last time I was here, they finally passed a 5-year surface transportation bill.
Right.
But that's not parity. You know, the governor committed to achieving parity in the speech, and we were very, very glad to hear that. And I think that's an important step forward for us. But to be clear, parity is equality, and that's what parity always was before we didn't have parity in 2009. And it was basically equal capital plans. And we're talking about $20.1 billion for DOT, and we're talking about $26.1 billion for the MTA, which they need and we support, but that's not parity.
Okay, but wait. Right, so parity to you is dollar for dollar. $1 is one. That's what parity means, equal parity, that's the definition. In the budget, though, do we even know where the $26 billion for the MTA is coming from?
Not really.
Okay, so this is the first time you worked in the Pataki administration, those many years ago, and you are familiar, therefore, with executive budgeting. I am familiar, but of course it's a little bit more of an art than a science, but nevertheless, I've never seen a budget with this little detail. I mean, there's a lot left out there. I don't understand how you put a budget together without any numbers in it.
Well, there are numbers, and there are some breakdowns, but there are certainly things that typically we would know by now about the capital plans that we don't know yet. But
how can we not know them and call it a budget?
Well, it's not fully spelled out there just yet, but this, you know, the budget is a process, right? And so the governor will make his 30-day amendments, or whatever day he decides to do. He has 30 days to do it. It's not always 30 days, sometimes it's sooner. And you know, the budget process on the legislative side starts tomorrow. I'll be testifying before the joint transportation budget hearing. But certainly there's some things that we would typically know by now that we don't know yet. But the bottom line is the governor is making a larger investment in infrastructure. That's good. He's committed to achieving parity, but we haven't achieved it yet. And that's just real clear. I mean, in fact, not only have we not achieved parity, but at $20.1 billion for DOT, which is statewide DOT. This is not upstate, downstate parity. This is roads and bridges and transit parity, which is the whole state.
Yep.
At $20.1 billion for the DOT system and $26.1 billion for the MTA, it's not only not parity, it's the biggest disparity, which is another defined word, not being equal ever.
Well, and then there's this number floating around out there, which is $100 billion. Now, you know, I'm a little bit mixing apples and oranges, and I understand that, but all of this matters to you because you're talking about people who are contractors, and therefore
our industry will build all of it.
Right. So I know John DeFrancisco, who is now the Deputy Majority Leader of the Senate, was the Senate Finance Chairman, and so therefore knows of what he speaks when he's talking about numbers and where is the information in the budget. He's also a little bit upset because all of this stuff is downstate focused. Now you've got some upstate urban cash in there, you've got some poverty initiatives, anti-poverty initiatives, and all of that is fantastic, but that's a big ticket item, that Penn Station item, which people have been trying to do for years, as you know.
And it needs to be done. It's a disgrace.
Yes, yeah. The Long Island Railroad extension, another big ticket item. I mean, these things are huge, and Javits Center, I mean, all those things, but there's nothing comparable to upstate. Is the problem that there couldn't be? I mean, could we be building on that scale upstate somewhere?
Well, certainly everything is more expensive, and projects like this are bigger and more involved in New York City. And we support these projects. They're all essential projects.
Sure, it's going to mean jobs for your members.
But
right.
we also think that you need to have reasonable, equitable investment in the statewide system of roads and bridges, because it helps offset the argument that some like to make on a regional basis. I don't get the luxury of arguing region versus region because I represent all the regions, right? So we support the whole of the program. But I mean, you think about it this way. Tappan Zee Bridge has gotten a lot of attention. It's a big project. The governor deserves the credit that he gets for advancing it. And a big part of why he advanced it was horror over the decrepit condition of the Tappan Zee Bridge, which is not news. Anybody who's driven on it knows it's in bad shape.
Yeah, it was unsafe.
Well, there are about 600 bridges, 588 to be exact, around the state that are rated in as bad or worse condition by DOT. So the needs are very clear. The last time we had a public needs assessment from New York State DOT was in 2009. They said they needed, over the next 5-year period, $25 billion to stop deterioration of the system. They got nowhere near that $25 billion. They got somewhere around 18, I think. So you've had deterioration of the system. So that number is bigger than $25 billion. So the needs are there. MTA's been out with their needs number for a while, and that's one of the reasons why they've gotten the commitment that they've gotten to help meet that need. DOT's needs are just as big, they're just as important, and they need to be met in the same way.
Well, but we also have known that there's no 5-year plan for the DOT. I mean,
well, there is now, and that's another thing that I think the governor deserves credit for here. They've proposed a 5-year capital plan, and that's progress. We haven't really had one of those since the end of the last Bond Act. We've sort of been going year to year. You extrapolate it out into a 5-year plan to see what the number is to compare to when you had 5-year plans. So I think they deserve credit for that. They deserve credit, for instance, on the Thruway for doing something that we've talked about for a while, which is getting the Canal Corporation off the backs and off the books of the Thruway.
Talking about that for quite some
time. For a long time. And we've been among those leading the charge. It makes sense. It costs the Thruway $85 million a year that toll payers are paying for to support a canal system that doesn't really have anything to do with the Thruway.
Okay, speaking of tolls, I mean, you're freezing the tolls on the Thruway for 5 years. And again, I mean, this is great if you're driving, but also questionable. I mean, sooner or later, you're going to have to pay the piper on that.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure in the long term how great it is, even if you're driving. I think we have some real concerns about what seems to be a pattern of state subsidy to what always has been and should be a toll-supported system.
But it was supposed to be paid off, and it's not paid off.
Look, I mean, was it going to be, then it was going to last forever once that period came? Okay. And the fact is, the Thruway, unlike the rest of the state's infrastructure, was pretty much built all at the same time. So it's all coming of age at the same time. And you're seeing really unprecedented deterioration on the Thruway, which you really shouldn't see on a toll road that you pay for the privilege of using. Yeah. I mean, it's to the point now in Western New York, you've got a span where there's a project that was delayed for a variety of reasons, but you have a project that was supposed to be done, it was delayed, hasn't happened yet. The pavement has deteriorated so badly they've had to lower the speed limit on part of the Thruway. This is unheard of. And so nobody likes tolls, but what happens in 2020 when this pressure to cap tolls comes off? Tolls are going to go up. They're going to go way up. Instead of if you had incremental adjustments over time, document it to the public. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to use this money to improve the Thruway, to make it safer, to make it better, make it less bumpy. The truckers have historically supported those kinds of toll increases because they know better infrastructure means
but not when it happens
they get
all
from A to B quicker.
On their backs.
Right. When you propose a 45% toll increase, as was done the last time they tried to do a toll increase just on commercial traffic, nobody supports it. And by the way, neither did we, because it would have resulted in a smaller capital program. So if people are going to pay more, they should at least be getting something for it. So I'm glad the governor is committed to the Thruway. Clearly he is. The move with the Canal Corporation is good news. It's similar to what he did last year, taking the cost of Troop T off the Thruway, which freed up more resources for them to reinvest. But it should be a toll-supported system, and the fact is we have real needs with DOT, with other infrastructure within the state system that the state is directly responsible for, that those dollars could be supporting.
Okay, well, obviously you're going to start tomorrow with the testimony, and the legislature will start its process of reviewing the executive budget, and we'll get more information, and we'll have you back, and you'll brief us on when it comes in.
In a lot of ways, it's a good start, and in a lot of ways, we have some work to do, so
yes,
stay tuned.
That's sort of where we usually start, but we're not as far behind as we might be.
Let's hope.
Thank you, Mike. Up next, we'll be talking more about the governor's address with our political insiders. Governor Cuomo has outlined a quite ambitious agenda